A special good afternoon, everybody. Warm and hearty welcome to all of you. Absolutely delighted that Dr. Ramanaidu has agreed to share and invest a gracious amount of his time, presence, inspiration with us this afternoon, and to share with us how we can answer this vexing question of build communities, but particularly in a school focus setup, how to get greater parental involvement on board. I see that the founder of Partners for Possibility, Dr. Louise van Rijn, is also in the room, and so we want to also extend a warm and hearty welcome to Dr. Louise. Also with me on this call is our Western Cape manager, Mr. Selwyn Page, and later on, Mr. Page will share a few words of his wisdom. Also in the background, we have Naflankla, Linda Taylor, Deboma Fatley, and also assisting us is Melissa Oosthuizen, and I just wanted to extend a welcome to them and all of you who are here during the school holidays, particularly to be with us this afternoon. So sit back and enjoy this amazing afternoon with us. So, firstly, I'm going to hand over to our Western Cape manager, to Mr. Salva Page, to just share a few words of inspiration with all of us. Thank you, Salva. Thanks so much. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to go into a breakaway room, and Salvan has graciously offered to assist us. And we would like you to, we're going to spend about 3, 4 people in the room, about 2 minutes each. And we want you to do the following: introduce yourself and share what about our invitation made you curious so that you showed up here this afternoon during your school holidays. So, what about our invitation made you curious so that you showed up here this afternoon? So, over to you, Salvan.
Welcome, Michelle. Putting people into breakaway rooms right now.
Thank you. Could you just reassign a breakaway room to me? I accidentally went out of the breakaway room.
Into the room. Michelle, I'm struggling to get you back into the room. Give me a moment.
We'll just wait a second or so. Welcome back, everybody. I see we have about 36 people on this call or in this space. We normally say the room, but it's also Twitter speaks about spaces. So we have about 37 people in the space, and we're delighted to have you this afternoon. And so in the room where I was at, very, very interesting, amazing people sharing openly and freely about their curiosity and what it is that they hope to gain from this program. So maybe from just some feedback from the room in which you were at, maybe one or two people want to share what struck you about what was shared in your space. Anyone? Stuart, are you?
Red one, it's Alta speaking.
Hi, Alta.
Yeah, I think what I appreciated from our conversation, we were three people, so one principal and two business people, but the same concern and the same care about what is happening in basic education, you know, the stress and that our teaching staff are under. And in the end, you know, how do we work together to make that a better world? Because that is such a key issue in South Africa, basic education, that we do need to work together.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Alta. Appreciate that. Anybody else would like to share with us what struck them in their specific space where they were at?
Red
Michelle.
one, Nola's hand is up.
Oh, yeah, Nola. Go for it.
Yeah. Hello, how are you doing?
Can't complain, Nola. Good to have you.
Good. Yeah, what struck me about the conversation we had is the eagerness of a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm an alumni. I was a business partner, I think 3 years back. So yeah, the eagerness of a teacher to say, I just want to be equipped so that I can run more smoothly. That for me is just marvelous. Someone who takes initiative to personally develop themselves. Because I know whenever you go through a journey of personal development, you fill your cup. And when you fill your cup, everyone around you, they benefit. Whether they are kids that you're teaching, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your spouse, you name it, they're going to benefit. And for me, it was that if someone says, I just want to equip myself, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. James, you're sharing there with us, Nolo. Anybody else? I thought Michelle wanted to jump in there. Michelle Basson.
Oh, hello, how are you?
Good, man. Any comments from your side?
It's point, and I want to agree. A chat room. I couldn't hear what was going on. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you, but you are
well, what
breaking
really
up.
happened my year with school. Okay. Yeah, the signal here is very bad, and I've just moved into the area, so I haven't been able to get a good connection. Yeah.
We're just blessed to have you and delighted that you are here. So, as long as you can hear us, I'm sure you're going to benefit something this evening. Yeah. Thank you so much. Someone, I can't see all the hands. Do you see another hand, Salman?
I see no other hands, Red one, but I'm sure there's someone more that wants to talk.
What blew me away about our group is people care. People want to do something because they care. Wow.
Thank you, Alan. Andre, I mean. Thank you, Andre. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to give you a little more time later to go into a breakaway room after we have heard Dr. Radiant Rama speak. But before, it's only proper that we introduce our special speaker, guest, dear friend, correctly and properly. And so with that, Dr. Ramanaidu has been in positions of leadership since 1983 and has spent the last 30 years as an executive director of the Democracy Development Program. In this position, his focus was on people, impact, and processes. People, impact, and processes. He is passionate about our country and the need for young people to be heard and actively engaged in designing our future together. He holds a PhD in social geography and has been a fellow of Northwestern University in Chicago. He is a graduate of the prestigious International iGold Gestalt Leadership and Organizational Development Program run by the Cleveland Institute. He has also been part of Africa OD Network for the past decade. He is a process facilitator, a lateral thinker with the ability to bring disparate groups together to find areas of commonality and harness this energy to increase impact and reach of their work. He is also a wellness trauma therapist, and this allows him to bring both compassion and emotional intelligence into his work. His belief is that in taking care of ourselves first, we can better serve others and the organizations we work in. Rama describes himself as a social architect that designs spaces and processes that enable transformative conversations. This in turn helps us to create and own a future distinct from the past. His consultancy, 6 Degree Shift, is all about connecting people and their communities to intention, purpose, and to each other. When we are able to do this, we can have conversations that are truly transformative. He has worked with Citizen Leader Lab since 2011, formerly Symphonia South Africa, offering their clients an immersive experience of the value of associational life and build a new awareness of our connectedness to each other to create a more just and compassionate world. He is presently contracted by Partners for Possibility, Citizen Leader Lab, to run workshops throughout South Africa on community building and leadership for business leaders and school principals. He has participated actively in the not-for-profit sector by bringing the right people together to feel the power of associational life and make the shift from scarcity to abundance and possibilities. Has worked with corporate clients both nationally and internationally. Some of his past clients include Komani Mines, First National Bank, Standard Bank, German Technical Corporation, Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Designed Learning US, the European Union, EcoSafe, National Initiative for Civic Education, called NICE. He is currently co-piloting a leadership initiative highlighting the shift from leading with positional power and the expert to leading as a convener, co-creating the future. As also an associate, and he is also an associate of Designed Learning in the US and is an accredited flawless consulting facilitator. And with that illustrious career, I have known Rama to be an absolutely humble, caring, and generative soul. And it is my absolute delight to welcome him once again and to hand the space over to him to share his pearls of wisdom. The vexing question in our country is how do we bring communities together? And how do we co-create the future we want? And at schools, our challenge is always how do we bring parents on board and to get them more engaged at the school? And so I hope that this afternoon, Rama will shed a little more light on how we can perhaps gain greater insights in this challenging question. So over to you, Dr. Rama, and welcome once again.
Thank you, Ridwan. It's such a privilege to be with such an illustrious group doing this work. And every time I hear that introduction, I gave it the shortened version. I see you lengthened it quite a lot. It's just Rama. So it's in this space with colleagues and peers talking about the invitation. And for me, the question that Ridwan, you mentioned about how do we get the right people into the room to have conversations that matter. And so I want to invite you to write some things into the chat. And the question is addressed to each of you individually. What is it about some of the gatherings and meetings that you attend or have to attend that really annoy you? What is it about some of the meetings and gatherings that you attend or compelled to attend that really annoy you? What is it about those meetings that, yeah, that just rubs you up the wrong way? Just put it into the chat. Let's see what turns up. So we'll see it from there and then start the conversation about why the invitation matters. So write freely, please, in the chat. We'll just open the chat up right now so you can type in your 1 or 2 words. What is it about meetings that you attend that really annoy you? Some of the meetings, not all of them. Lack of focus or purpose, meetings about meetings. Not having a voice. Long and pointless meetings. We all know about those. Morning sessions. Not being listened to and not being supported. Uninspiring speakers. Okay, now it's flowing quite freely. Okay, you can keep writing in the chat, but I think you get the idea. And so the question to us is really a very simple one. Those are the same reasons why people don't come to our meetings. That's why they don't turn up. They're bored. They don't see the point. There's no learning. There's no engagement. They're not respected. They have no voice. It's bums on seats. So we sit there and want to be entertained or lectured to, be told what's happening or taught or made to feel like kids again. And so those are the very things that keep people out of our rooms. And we've all experienced that in this space. So there's something about the way in which we invite people into our spaces, the intentionality of it. And by intention, I simply mean to let the person who receives the invitation feel, I really want you in this room. I value your voice. I want to hear what you have to say. I promise to listen and to respect you. That's not so hard to think about because that's what we all want in life.
Yeah.
But the way we do invitations, it's like, come, don't come, I don't really care. Come, I'll go 1 hour later. I'll keep you later than usual. It's okay. Come and the lights are not working. I'm sorry about that. So people feel, disrespected, but we won't say it. We're far too polite to say anything. So we tolerate this, especially when it comes to our schools and parents come into our rooms because it's half because they feel they have to be there and they don't really want to be there. And the second notion is their cost if I don't turn up in the room. So when you put that together in this space, I'd like to think of invitation. When we design an invitation, I use the metaphor of a wedding invitation. When someone invites you to a wedding, it's as personal as you can get, right? They normally come to your home, you'll break bread, have a cup of tea, talk about family, talk about the child who's getting married. And as they leave the door, they say, well, I'll see you on Saturday, right? And you say, of course, I'll be there. There's something about that notion of feeling that I really want you to be present. I value your presence. I really appreciate you taking the time to be there. And how many weddings have you been to where the halls have been empty? And don't think it's about the food. It's about the fact that people have been invited at a very, very personal level. And so what Peter Block did, and Peter's I think a mentor to a lot of us in this room, is to ask a question: why can't we craft invitations that create this feeling amongst people to answer the very questions that that came up for you in the chat? What would it be like if we invited people into a room where they knew exactly why they were coming? They knew exactly what they were going to get. They knew how they would be engaged, what the cost would be, and perhaps we'd get more people into the room. And that was really the thinking behind the notion of how we invite people matters, who we invite matters into the room. And when you think about schools, the notion is, and a lot of schools really battle with even getting quorums to meetings to talk about finances. People come into the rooms when there's a crisis. Something bad happens, then we have a full hall. Talk about the school gardens or the school funds and the room is empty. Talk about passing a budget and you can't even get a quorum.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really sad that principals say, you know what, they almost know ahead of time that they will not get the quorum at the first meeting or the second one, and they plan accordingly. Now, that's sad for me, that they know that by the third meeting, even without a quorum, we can pass the budget. And the notion is that people don't understand the games, that people don't know. And so we make stories about the people, about why they don't turn up in the room. They don't care about their children. They don't have time for the school. They're busy doing other things. And so we make them the other. And so what I want to share with you today is a disruption of that model of how we invite people into our spaces, so that even before they come into the room, there's a commitment to the process. It's a choice. I choose to come because I want to be there. And what does it mean for me to say what the choice is? And so there are 5 components to the invitation, which we'll talk about briefly. And I'll give you a slide later on that you can have a look at. But basically, the idea is, if we think consciously about the invitation, who we design it for, and what we'll do with the people in the room, it changes the way it lands on people's desks. For example, the invitation you received to today's function spoke about abundance, network, and learning. Right? These are the 3 words that stood out for you. So you're expecting some of those things in the room. And if we set the expectation, whoever's convening it has to deliver it. Otherwise, you won't come back, right? It's not complicated. So people come to your first meeting at school and you have a full hall. And 3 months later, you've got 10 people in the hall. You start a committee and people are very enthusiastic on day 1 and we all put our hands up. And 3 months later, you're battling to even get that committee to be functional. Although people said yes, they would come. So what is it that we're doing that's not able to engage people in the process? And that's really what the invitation is about. And this does not apply just to schools. It applies to organizations, institutions, even social gatherings. For us to think consciously about how we invite people into the room. And it's basically, how would I like to be treated when I'm invited? What helps me make my choice, but whether I turn up in a space or not? And you know, we all make those choices. And folks, I think if you're honest, you all know that most of us have suffered parent meetings at schools. It's not a place we like to be. It's a place where we have to be. We sit there in rows and we look at this person in the front, basically making us school kids again, telling us about the code of conduct and how we should behave as obedient parents. And there is no space for engagement. So the invitation has an implication that it's not just the invitation, but it's also the structure of the room that we bring people into that promotes the engagement. That's a disruption from the normal thing. So people can say, hey, this is different. I didn't experience this before. I'm curious about this. And then we set something up so that it starts to do its work. And the first thing that we need to think about is that we are so unclear about the purpose of our gatherings. You know, we say, come to the AGM. and they got 14 items on the agenda. And you know that when you're in that room, all you're doing really is ticking boxes for number 14, right? So you have your tea and you go home. It's that notion of let's get through this thing and get it done. We're trying to do too much in this space, and our meetings are designed not for engagement. They're designed for talking. They're designed for experts. They're designed for something. Tell us what you want us to do, how to be a good parent, how to support your child. There's no space for my voice in that. It's almost like that's a nice to have. So we play pretend with engagement. We have a 2-hour session. At the end of the session, in this big hall of 500 people, we ask the question, are there any questions? And then we get surprised when there are no questions. Or the same hands keep going up all the time, but most people are largely silent. And someone said in the chat, people attend functions and sometimes are invisible for the entire function. They're not there. No one sees them. They don't say a word, but they're present in this space. So those are all the things that we need to think about when we say, what's the intention of the gathering? The clearer we make the intention, the more likely it is that I'll make a choice that's based on what you're telling me. If it's come to a parents' meeting, it's about school funds. It's about a crisis. I say, well, it doesn't affect me, so why the hell would I go into that place? Why would I go into that space? And that's the element. So the first point of invitation is be precise about why you want people to come into the room. And that know that people must have a choice. They can choose not to come. And that's perfectly okay. You come into the room because you choose to come into the room. And in our work with Citizen Leader Lab and with schools in particular, the notion of taking for granted that people won't turn up or that they turn up as just obedient people has been so deeply embedded that it's slightly scary to invite engagement into the room. It's much easier to keep people in a big group and talk to them from the front through a mic and ask in the last 5 minutes, do you have any questions? That's a stupid question. That's an example of a stupid question. At the end of the session, do you have any questions? Real engagement is something deeper than that. So if I tell you, for example, come to this gathering because we're talking about the future of your child. You need to be a part of this conversation. There's the element of the personalization of the invitation that makes you sit up and think about it. And so I want to give you a little story of an engagement we had about school governing bodies, because it is a season now in schools when school governing bodies are elected, and the process is far from perfect. Very often these things are contrived before people enter the room. People come for the positions. They think it's about money and tenders and procurement and everything else that goes with it. And so the school that I worked with asked a question, beautiful question about possibility, which simply said, what would happen if the SGB at our school was fully functional? If it functioned as it should? And they were going through a process with us about the invitation. And one young lady said, well, you know, I think the problem with our SGBs is that they don't know what they're signing up for. They have an idea of what an SGB is. They hear things and stories, and they want to be chairperson and vice person and treasurer and run the school and all the messes that we have in schools. And she said, I think the problem is the way we elect these SGBs. And so we talked about it and said, well, how would you do it? I said, well, instead of asking people to just elect or nominate other people, why don't we ask people to nominate themselves? I said, wow. And the room felt very silent. The whole staff, what do you mean for themselves? Well, it's still fairly democratic. Every parent has a choice to do it, but we ask them to do it. And listen carefully. So they said, yeah, we'll do that. Let's do the invitation. And so based on this learning of what we're sharing here, the invitation was different from the other invitations. It said, if you are a champion and believe in this school and the future of your child, stand up. We need you on our SGB. Just listen to the emotion in that invitation. Stand up. We need you on our SGB. Just send us 5 lines telling us why you'd like to serve this community and this school. It was such a powerful personal invitation to people to stand up, and people responded. They sent their 5 lines. They didn't ask for a CV. They didn't ask about what job you're doing. They didn't ask what your educational qualifications were. They simply asked the question, are you passionate enough? Are you a champion for this school? If you are, stand up. That was the invitation. And people turned up, people, not the normal faces, because the invitation spoke to them at a deeply personal level. I believe in the school. My child is there. I want to do it. So they broke up. They disrupted the old narrative of, come, don't come, vote for somebody, ask to be voted for, and the same old tired people get into the situation again and nothing changes. And then they designed another invitation for parents, which said, 18 champions have stood up for our school to serve you and our children. Come and meet them. Instead of saying, come to an election meeting to elect our new SGB, I mean, listen to the difference in the two invitations, right? Come and meet our champions. And you know what? They had a full hall. So it's a question of how intentionally am I designing the invitation? Because I really want these people to come into the room. And it must land in a way that if I as a parent get it, I must feel it. I must feel it. And then I step into the room to do this work. And so there's 2 examples of an invitation. And it doesn't take very much for us to change the old narrative about how this thing works about invitations. It's just that it becomes a routine thing for us, come to the meeting without thinking intentionally about it. And once we start doing it more intentionally, we become not only clear about the purpose of the meeting for us, but also the people entering the room in this space. So when we design invitation, be very clear about the intention of the gathering. Why do you want me in the room? Why should I come into this room? And if you make a promise, deliver on it. If you can't do something, don't say you can. That's being disrespectful to the people in the room. Parents are busy people too. They come for 2 hours after work to sit in your meeting, and they find that the meeting was really about school funds, and they want more money and not about what they said it was. They feel disappointed, disrespected when that happens. So make the intention very clear about it. And very often in us talking about the intention of the gathering, we can also sometimes get to the point to say, hey, do we actually need this gathering? I'm not clear about why we're meeting. So maybe it doesn't require a gathering. Maybe it requires a memo. Maybe it requires a note. Maybe it requires something else. But if I'm asking people to spend 2 hours of their time physically in a hall, it better be something where there's engagement. So very often people say, actually, we don't need a meeting. We don't need the gathering. We need something else here. Or we're not ready for this. Let's go back and rethink this in this space. And as that becomes clear and goes out, people then have a clear idea of design. Of, well, I choose to enter this room. So the first point is get the possibility. And this speaks about the possibility.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's another example of invitation, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So he's done his little piece, whatever that was about. We're still back here.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And we're
quite
good to
a
go.
title.
We're good to go.
So as I was saying, once we have the intention set into place and we decide who we want in the room, we personalize the invitation to get that person into the room. And sometimes it means that there are 2 or 3 invitations that are differentiated. One for a parent, one for an NGO, one for the department. And you might have different levels of interaction. So the more personal you make the invitation, the more likely it is I'll attend. If you call me up, which is what you did, by the way, you call me up and say, Rama, you know what, we have this session. We'd love you to come. It's more easy for me to say yes, the more personal it is. The more distant it is, if I got something, the email, and I got the sense that come, don't come, it doesn't matter. I also would say it doesn't matter, and I wouldn't turn up, right? But to refuse Ridwan is very, very difficult because he makes it so personal in this space. So when you're designing, the intention is the first thing. The second thing is to make the invitation as personal as possible. To whom it might concern really doesn't cut it. Dear parent might be slightly better, but the best thing you can do is pick the phone up, see the person, talk to them. If you can't do that, think intentionally about how you can personalize it with the parent's name, with the name of the child, who is the parent. These are all simple ways. And nowadays with technology, we can do that. We have databases. So there's no excuse not to take the extra time to make me feel special when I get that invitation. You know, dear Rama, we'd love you to be here at this session. That's much better than saying dear parent or to whom it might concern. So those two notions. The third element of the invitation, and this is a one that we battle with, it's that there's no free lunch. If you come to a gathering, be prepared to do something and tell me what it is that you want me to do up front. So when you enter the room, you've already bought your ticket. It's what Peter calls the hurdle. He says there must be a hurdle for you to come into the room. And a hurdle is not complicated, it's simple, but it does tell the person up front, if you choose to come to this gathering, there's something that's expected of you. There's something that you have to do. If you come to this room, be prepared to meet with strangers. If you come to this room, be prepared to engage with people, come with ideas, something that tells the person if they choose to come into the room, they're already committed to the process. Because I said so on the invitation. So if I come, for example, you come to the room and say, well, if you come to this gathering, be prepared to spend the full 2 hours. You know, up front, I've got you for 2 hours, right? How often do we go to meetings and the meetings run over time? And then when you're forced to leave for some other engagement, we all look at you in a funny way and say, you're so disrespectful, why are you leaving? But what about me and my time? Those are all the things that we bear in mind when we think about the invitation. So think about what is that people have to do when they come to a meeting. Otherwise, people can come into our rooms and just sit there with their arms folded, and we can't really say anything. Our normal thing is these parents are not engaged. They're not even talking. They're not even asking questions. We're not asking the question of ourselves, what are we not doing that's very clear to them about what they have to do in this room when they come into the room? So the hurdle is thinking about giving something to people who come into the room as a pre-purchase of their ticket. When they come into the room, I now have a right to be in this room. I'm going to spend 2 hours. I read the document. I know I'm going to meet with strangers. I came with new ideas. These are all ideas of hurdles that sets you up for the meeting as you start to do the work. And the last element of the gatherings that we have is that there should always be an element of choice. And by that, I simply mean that if I say no, it doesn't lose me my seat at the table. It simply says, not this time. I'm still a member of this community. I choose not to come this time. And that should not upset us. We should be grateful that people say that. But those people who do enter the room are the ones who want to be engaged in the process. It's not about the numbers. It's about the quality of the engagement that we have in the room. When you put these 5 elements together, you have a recipe for an invitation. And all you need to do, and I urge you to try it. I'll send the slide to Ridwan so you can see it. Let's see if I can just share my screen quickly here with you. One. And as usual, when you want this to happen, this never happens. I'm going to open it again quickly for you guys. All right, can you see that? So these are the 6 elements of the invitation that really are the essence of and I call it a recipe because actually, if you follow the recipe, it's very hard to get it wrong. Just follow these 6 elements. Why are we convening? What's required should you choose to turn up? Make it as personal as possible. Get the right people into the room. Give them all the information that they need. And be clear that a refusal carries no cost. So you can try that. And I'm going to share an invitation with you. And this invitation was about poor results at school. The normal invitation would have been, our results are bad. We need to talk about this. So it speaks about the problem, right? So the notion for us is that we don't invite people into a problem. We just get more problems. We invite people into a possibility. So the group was working with this question of poor results and reframed it this way. Come make your child a future star. You can see that there's a hurdle. We'd like to see you there, not that you don't have to be there. The time is clear. The children will be supervised. You can see the intention behind the recipe is in the invitation. And so if you got an invitation like this from your school, you wouldn't think poor results, right? You think future star, potential, possibility. And that's the difference. So I'll share another one. This one was about low parent involvement in schools. And the thing was power up the future. And again, you can see the elements of the invitation in this design. And these invitations were done in about 20 minutes in a room, pen and paper, and people just got creative and they just followed the recipe. Follow the recipe. And so the idea is for the invitation, and it's really important, whatever the context of the invitation is, that you invite people into a future, into a possibility, not into a problem. If you invite people to the room to talk about drugs, guess what? You'll end up wagging your finger. Don't do drugs. You'll get the people preaching to us about drugs. You'll get the experts and consultants talking to us about it. We'll invite the police to come and tell us how dangerous it is. What will happen to you get into prison? But it's not about drugs, is it? Drugs is only a symptom of the problem. The real issue is that children don't feel that they belong. They have time on their hands. They go home to an empty home in the afternoons and don't know what to do. So the sense of this real urge to belong somewhere and joining drugs, joining a gang, all those things are a way to say, please see me, please bring me into this space. So the conversation is really about safety. And the invitation would simply mean, what if every child felt that they belonged at school? What if we saw it as our school? Just think of it, we're just using the words and the context differently to reframe it from a problem-based approach to a possibility-based approach. And when you invite people into a possibility, we invite creativity and innovation and compassion and free thinking and all those beautiful things that make us see a future that might have seemed beyond reach, instead of the problem that we're experiencing. Because the problem approach is really about something we inherited, the mechanical way of seeing the world. It's a problem, let's fix the problem. Let's engineer it out of the way. Human beings are not to be engineered. We have feelings, we have deep emotions, we want to be connected, we want to be heard, and those things are not taken into account. So we think we solve the problem. We solve drug problems by saying, let's put more fences, get more cameras, and search the kids. That's the answer. Let's get the big police sergeant to come with his big gun and tell us what prison is like if you do drugs. It's a fear-based approach. It's based on fear. Keep them scared. and then we can control you. This is a love-based approach. It says that fear is never sustainable. Fear diminishes us. We can't think and create when we're in a state of fear. We're simply surviving in this space. So when people come into a gathering like that, and the gathering is structured in a way so that they are engaged, that their voices are heard, they're being listened to. There's not one voice speaking in this space. The magic is created in the room. And our only task as the conveners is to harvest it and show it back to the group and say, wow, look how smart you guys are. We came up with all these ideas that I never even thought about. And if we keep on doing that and amplifying that over a period of time, people will want to come into your rooms because they sense the engagement. They want to be engaged. For many people in our communities, folks, their voices have never been heard. They've never been heard because the feeling for them is my story is not important. My voice does not matter. Our task is to tell them your voice does matter. We need you in this room. It might take us longer, but we need each other to make this work. And if we do that consistently over a period of time to the way which we invite people into the rooms, then the magic happens on its own. We don't create the magic. We allow the container to create the magic, and we just hold the space. So that's really the essence of the invitation. Let's pause a little bit here at one and take questions or thoughts or breakup. I don't know what you want to do right now with this space. It's 5 minutes to the hour. Are there questions or things you'd like to ask for clarification or things to add to the process with your own lived experience? You can drop it into the chat or speak it regarding the invitation. Maybe something I said made it feel uncomfortable for you.
And that's fine.
Yes.
But we will allow some questions later on. Maybe we can just take a break, go into a breakaway room, and let people just share their precious thoughts. I have this question for them in the sense that what excites you about what you've just heard, and what questions do you still have? So, what excites you about what you've just heard, and what questions do you still have? And maybe share that. Remember to observe the equality, each one having about 2-3 minutes, and bring all the voices in the group, in the room. Thank you, Salman.
Ridwan, sorry, before we go into the rooms, how long do you want them to be in the room?
Maybe 2-3 minutes each, so it's about 10
Good.
minutes.
10 minutes, Sylvan. 10 minutes will be fine.
Mm.
You want to open?
Oh,
Jesus.
oh Jana, ek is geles vanavond. Sy het lekker hard gewerk vandag. Hi, Redwan.
Hi, Salman. We're back. We just wait a few minutes.
We're back.
All right. So before we hand over to Rama, just to add another piece of the building blocks, we just wanted to bring a few voices into the room. So maybe anybody is prepared to share what struck you about that conversation in the group where you were at. I see there's Becca. Let's go, Becca.
So it struck me that Zoom is still rude. Margareta was still telling me something there, but I think I had a question that's still in my mind. Rama, in the beginning, you talked about the AGM, right? Being a routine meeting and standard. But I probably have a mental block there. I don't know how to make those meetings that are routine, set agendas, and probably not expect to make them any more exciting than as boring as they are.
I hear you,
Okay.
Becca.
We're going to give Rama a chance to maybe respond. Irma, we see your hand.
Thank you. I'll be very short. Andre Young has actually said
Okay,
this in
Nolo.
the
Okay,
chat.
go for it, Nolo.
Yes, Andre Young said something, I don't know how to pronounce it, but simply put, converting anxiety into excitement. Like if someone wants to show up there, they show up with excitement, not with panic, like what's going on. Are these kids not listening to their teachers? Are they drugs in school? You know, they should be excited, like we're going to build our children's future. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Nolo.
Thank you, Nolo. Irma?
Yeah, I just shared in the room that after we had the community building session in my circle last year with Rama, we really tried to enforce the invitations, and it really worked at the schools. We even shared with each other the way we did it. I did it for my COP sessions, to invite the people to the COP sessions in a different way, the way that you suggested, Rama. My only problem with this, and I know that there's a reason why things happen in the program the way it does happen, but it comes so late in the program. I would have liked it to come earlier, especially this, that it's a tool that's really working. for people to invite parents and teachers and whoever you want to invite. And I would have loved it to come earlier in the program so that you can use it for so much quicker and longer.
We hear you, Irma. We hear you. But that is a long debate to respond to. But yeah, we hear that point. All right. Is there any other hands? I see Andre's hand is up.
And Mokhadi as well.
Mukhadi, okay.
Yeah, I think Rama, thank you for the wonderful chat. I saw the way you used Peter's 6 elements of belonging. It was awesome. But the one thing that comes to mind as I review my time as a partner back in 2015, 16, and now having done more work with his stuff is this, the phenomenology of the way we inspire the capacity of the collective to shape its future. The art and science goes beyond just using the elements of community and belonging. Because there's a consciousness, there's an emergence of human consciousness that I think we can tap into that goes beyond just the physical to the metaphysical, where we can begin to really take this excitement and turn them on. And I mean ever on. Because, we live in a country where in 94, I was turned on, A Better Life for All. And now we turned off, and, we turned on and we turned off. I mean, the circumstances and the ecosystem is turning us on and off, on and off, on and off. How do we keep them turned on is where I think we need to be pushing beyond thresholds of leadership and building the capacity of the collective to shape the future in a sustainable, supporting manner. But that's my comment that kind of emerges as I listen to you today.
Thanks, Andre.
Thank you. Mukhadi, over to you. Mukhadi, you muted. Okay, while Mukhadi is struggling on that side, maybe there's any other hands you see. Oh, there is Mukhadi.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon. Thank you. I haven't really heard the question that you posed, but I believe in the society we are living in, if we can all try to take part, positive responses in whatever we do, I think we can have a positive contribution to our community. Hence, the invitation, personal invitations are working handsomely in the sense that a person needs to account for what is being called for. And then there is a very positive response when invitation is personalized. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful for sharing that. Any other hands? All right, Rama, we're going to hand over to you. I don't see any other hands.
So just two things. Is there another comment? So Bega, your question about the AGMs. Some things I think we need to endure, but that does not mean that we still need to follow the same structure again. Even an AGM, where you're doing business things that have to get done at the school, can be shifted if our focus is about engaging people about the things that they have to be involved in for the sake of their children in the school. So an AGM, we all as parents dread those meetings, right? We just dread those meetings because we know we're going to sit for 3 hours and people are fully with stuff and there's no engagement in the process. So there's some things that a parent has no say in. For example, the budget allocated by the department. It's done. But there are always elements at the school that require some kind of engagement. That's not about money. It's about your engagement. So how do we bring those elements into such a meeting that people feel that this is our school? It's not just the annual general meeting. It's let's talk about our future together. What if the AGM had that title? Let's talk about our future together. We need each other. Just to frame it differently, it's an AGM, yes. And then when we do that, your question changes from the finger wagging principle of this is what you have to do to is what can we do to ensure every child at this school achieves their full potential? And this is what we're doing. What is it that you can do? It's an invitation, right? And so you put them into small groups and they talk with each other, and the structure enables that to happen. And we harvest that and say, well, we've heard each other speak. And when people are involved in creating their own future, there's a stake in it. There's a stake in the ground. And then when you ask people to stand up, I stand up because I intentionally put up my hands, because I was a part of the conversation. It was my idea that was birthed in this space. And so when I commit to something like that, it's a far deeper commitment than asking people to volunteer, not knowing what on earth they're volunteering for. You know, we need a chairperson, a vice chairperson, the hands go up. And we say, yes, do you have a mover and a seconder? I mean, really, what is that? So if we choose engagement as the way, even in the so-called boring meeting, and people begin to see that, listen, yes, we have to do some business, but we also had a chance to meet other parents and talk about my child's future. So it's never absolute beggar that, you know, we cannot do away with business completely. Sometimes we just have to do that. You have a SMT meeting at your school or SGB meeting, there's certain procedures and protocols. But we can start to engage them. For example, we often read to members about the code of conduct. And my experience has been, done this many, many times. You can do it two ways. You can sit them down in the hall and say, this is the school code of conduct. Or you could do it differently and say, we need a code of conduct for our school that we can all own. What would that look like? And I guarantee you, every single time, nothing outrageous came into the room. In fact, it was sometimes even stronger than what was in the code of conduct. The difference was my voice is there. So instead of telling you about the code of conduct, we decide what code of conduct works for us at our school. What does respect look like at our school? What does it mean for us? And we talk about that in a way which really gives it life, it animates it. And then I get engaged in the process. So the invitation is so much more than just saying, come into the room. You know, which talks to Andre's point about beyond just the 6 conversations. I think the 6 conversations is not new to us. Those things we know about it. The problem, folks, is that we've become so deeply embedded in the old way of doing things. Communities have learned for so long that they've been voiceless and without power, that even when you ask them to engage, they don't know how to. They're scared to. They don't have agency. They feel they're stupid. So part of our responsibility as conveners is when we bring them into that room to respect that deeply, hold them, support them as they find their voices. And as they start to do that, as the voice begins to get agency, it starts to co-create the future on its own. Because normally when you get communities into the room, they just sit there silently. Even if you ask them to speak, they won't speak. They say what you want them to hear because they're scared. Poverty is their story. I'm stupid, I'm not educated, I'm not as smart as you are. So please help me, fix me up, sort me out. And we're saying, actually, we can't fix you up. We're not here to sort you out. We're here to work with each other to find a space together to sort it out. And we know we can. And that just flips the entire way in which we get people into the room to do the work. So their first result is, no, I'll be quiet. But the way in which we structure our community building gatherings is that it's very difficult to be quiet. I'll give you an example, right? In this session, we've put 40 people on, 50 people on the call. When Selwyn put us into breakaway rooms, every one of us had to speak, right? If I kept you in the big group, you could stare at my face the whole day and not say one word. It's the same thing in the room when we have people physically in the room. Are we thinking that every voice here needs to be heard first in this space? And Peter's favorite thing is that your meeting hasn't started until every voice has spoken. It's a beautiful start to the day, right? So you spoke. I don't need to hear you as a convener, but you brought your voice into the space. And so slowly the ownership of the room shifts from the principal as the expert in the front of the room to us, the parents and children whose future we're trying to craft, right? That's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to sell this future to them. We ask them to buy into our vision, be aligned with us. And of course, the polite thing to say, oh yes, thank you so much. You're so smart and so clever. And the inversion is we're saying, actually, it's not about my smartness. You are smart and you're clever. You just don't know it. You've been told for so long that you have nothing, that you believe the story. Now our task is to blow away the dust and say, wow, look at what you have in the room. And when they see it and experience their stories and their agency, something magical happens in the room. And sometimes you have a gathering like this and you don't achieve everything you want to, Bega. You know, talking about the AGM, you don't achieve everything. But if people came into your AGM, they had a great time. They were engaged. They were laughing. They were sharing stories. Guess what? The next time you invite them into your hall, they'll come, right? They'll come because they love the engagement. So you're building up. This is not a quick fix to anything. It's a way of how we as leaders turn up in the room. We turn up as conveners, not fixers of other people's futures. That's not our job. We're not here to save anyone. We can't save anyone. Just be the best version of yourself so that you, when you're in the room, you make yourself invisible as those voices come into the space. And once it's done, you can be very quiet because they create their own magic. And you have to be in the room to experience what happens when people find their voice and they say a story and people say, wow, that's the first time I felt heard. I mean, imagine that. It's the first time I spoke and nobody interrupted me. Nobody told me I'm stupid. Nobody told me I'm off the topic. They just listened to me and said, thank you for sharing the story. That's a life-changing experience for people who have never experienced that before. And we have to know as conveners, for all of us in this room, when we present that opportunity and do it this way in the room, you're changing lives and you might never see it. You might never see it, experience, but we have to believe that when we change the structure and the format, and we'll make sure that people are seen, heard, loved, and appreciated, the magic takes on its own hue and does its own work. So Andre's point about transformation, the 6 conversations are just words on a page. When you're in the room and we experience it, it's a really powerful experience because you don't know what's going to come into that room, right? You don't know what stories are going to be shared in that space. And so you don't have an expectation of an outcome. I'm just here so that we can have a transformative conversation. And I'm not attached to the outcome. That's a big thing for us because all our meetings have outcomes and end results and tasks and projects and committees. That's what we want to do, right? And we get disappointed when we don't achieve that. But the reality is if we engaged in the process, raised the questions about our doubts, our fears, why it will work, why it didn't work, what we should do differently, and we are heard in the space, then it changes the outcome of the gathering. Then I'm invested in the outcome. You know, I went to this meeting and we spoke about how I can make my child a star. And I shared with parents and wow, we are so aligned. And we decided that once a week, we're going to meet and talk. So now in that space, there's no teacher. There's no school principal. It's just parents getting together because they shared stories. So that's really the essence. The invitation is simply a way to bring those elements into the room. Because once we have them in the room, they'll experience the magic of connection, of association, of sharing stories. And that is the real invitation. It says, come into the room and share your story with other people who care for, like you, for our children and the school. If you care, come into this room. We'd love to have you here. That's the essence of an invitation.
Thank you, Rama. So for now, we're just going to open up the space, maybe for one or two questions that people may have, so that we can at least address some of your. We don't want to leave you hanging, if you know, figuratively speaking. But yeah, anybody just want to pose a question or maybe share a fresh thought? I see the chat's been quite busy, and thank you for your contributions thus far. No questions for Rama? There's a story that. Sorry.
Ridwan,
Please
hi.
go for it.
Can you hear me?
Go.
It's Alta.
Hi, Alta.
Yeah. So something that I've shared in our breakaway room, and while Rama was speaking, you know, about the possibilities, creating the possibilities. I recently listened to a podcast on negative thoughts. And I mean, if we look at the news and we listen to people speaking, it's negative. You know, we complain about the electricity and the crime and I mean, there's so many things we complain about. And in this podcast, the presenter said, obviously we need to focus on not thinking negative, because if we're thinking negative, we're going to be negative. And the question he said one should pose to yourself if you catch yourself thinking negatively is, what will my next thought be?
Wow.
And that was so powerful. And later that day, I was busy with something and I had all these negative thinking going on. And then I remembered the podcast of that morning. And it is so powerful. It was so powerful to stop that flow of negative thinking. And I believe for us as leaders, be it school or business leaders, we need to change within ourselves in order to allow other people to also see the possibilities. We need to see that first, and that's going to start by curbing the negative thinking and focusing on what's possible.
Thank you, Alta. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Manita. I just want to talk to Dr. Rama Reddy. Hi, Dr. Reddy, it's Manita Singh. This is my first time with the Leadership Lab, and I'm a bit nervous about it, but you know, your whole talk about the invitation and the approach is very, very interesting to me. But at the same time, how do I go about not feeling like I'm tramping on the principal's toes? How to go about it softly, where I feel I'm adding value to him and not like you taking over or telling him what to do, or, you know, how do I go about that? Just a question.
That's a question we all grapple with. Talking truth to power. And, you know, we're so hierarchical and so obsessed with our positions that sometimes we close ourselves off to new learning. And it's tragic for us, because there are so many people with so much of wisdom and willing to help. But if the leadership is in a place where they are not committed to learning and being open and curious, then it stifles someone like you who wants to do something. And that's a whole different conversation. But I think for me, the idea is when we meet stumbling blocks like that, and you'll always meet that in your life, principal, someone else, SMT, someone will do that to you, is don't give up. Small victories. For me, it's always about first steps, right? So for example, You can offer to the principal, sir, I know you're busy. Can I design the next invitation to the AGM? That's not confrontational, right? I'd like to try something. Let's see how it works for us. And let it go. Don't get attached to the accolades or anything else. Just do it. And let the person experience that with you. So the moment we, because our notion of thinking always is about contestation. I'm better than you. I'm higher than you. I'm in a better position than you. So when you challenge that, you're almost always in a losing position because you're seen as a threat. Who are you to tell me that? I'm the principal. I need to know this. So you navigate your way through the complexity by just making the changes in yourself. Sometimes we need to give up on trying to change the whole world. Just change how I turn up in the world. Change how I turn up in the world. And that's as much as you can do. And at some point, something interesting will happen in this space. So it's about contestation and about when people feel threatened, they close up. So how do I do it in a way that's not confrontational, but seen as simply helping you do your purpose? You tell the principal, example, I noticed that we don't get a good attendance at schools meetings. Can I try something different? And then I would go to him and say, well, what do you think? So I bring him into the team so that he doesn't feel less than, that, oh, this person showed me up. And then you would say something like, the principal and I designed this together. Let go of your ego. That's a big thing for us. We don't need to prove anything to anybody. If you get the work done and we have a full hall, that should be reward enough for us, right? And you can say the principal, even give them the credit for it. It's okay, but you got the result you wanted. And I think for us as leaders, whether you're a teacher, SMT, wherever you are still in the position of leadership. You can lead yourself consciously in that space and choose how you turn up. It's a choice. We can resign, accept, deny, fight, rebel, or we can say, that's my real purpose here. And I'm not going to let this thing get in the way of that. And that's the best we can do in this space. And you just keep trying because this is not easy work. The system is loaded against us, folks. The world is ruled by fear, about competition, about scarcity. We're trying to disrupt that narrative. So yes, you will meet opposition to it. But if we don't do this, then who will? If we don't stand up and try to change it in the spaces we're in, who will do it for us? So I just salute you that you're in the room and you're thinking about this, and that's enough as a starting point. You're aware of this thing now. So find your entry point and do something small in the space you're in.
Thank you. And what a beautiful way to conclude there, Rama. And if I may, I'm conscious of time, and I know we can continue this for hours on end. You do a 2-day workshop just on community building. But we would like to encourage you to keep the conversation going. We have a WhatsApp group, and we will send you an email, maybe with a questionnaire, and ask you how you found experience this session with Rama. Also ask you to join our WhatsApp groups and to start engaging and let us work together. The issue that I want to just raise before we conclude is this, that if we keep on doing the same things, how are we going to expect a different result? And that ties in so beautifully what Rama said about, if we have this problem-based approach, we are never going to shift or change anything. And if we change it to a possibility approach and focusing and zone in squarely on, it is about the children, not about the adults in the room. Everything we do, we need to try and say, let us work together to get quality education for every child in every classroom. And that should be our focus. And that will immediately eliminate the egos in the room. And so whatever we do is about our children and creating the future we want for everybody. So with that, in conclusion, I just want to thank you once again for your time, your precious time during the holidays, and those who are working, business leaders, you are so welcome. Thank you for spending time with Rama and ourselves. We really value and appreciate, and we are humbled by your presence. And we hope that in our small way, we have stimulated thought in how we can continue to rise up as caring, active citizens because I think all of us desire a better and a brighter future, not only for ourselves, but for our children. And so with that, thank you so much, Rama, and thank you, everybody. And maybe unmute yourself as we just bid goodbye to the community. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Goodbye.